beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. An extra TISH-erific day indeed. We've got a bunch of great business to get into today, including this decision, which has come down from the Supreme Court of the state of New York. Of course, this is Big Tishy Letitia James, somebody we've talked a lot about here. Covered the entire trial when she was trying to bankrupt the president and seize his assets in New York. She's the attorney general, and she got obliterated today. We're going to go through it. It was 323 pages, and we got this whole thing broken down. So it's a complicated case. There's a bunch of overlap between it, but we got the mind map that we're digging into today. So we'll go through it, and I really want to spend some time on this judge's decision, this Friedman opinion, because I think it's the most interesting, and he kind of rips Tish the most. But long story short, they're saying that $500 million plus judgment, and the total number is who knows because of the interest, but all of that is now gone, afuera, right out. And so we got reaction from the president. We got reaction from Tish. She's out with a statement about it. She says she's going to appeal it. I've got some more reaction from Alina Abba in the House, and Alina Abba is going through something. So she just got hit with another order from the court saying that Alina Abba is no longer going to be the attorney there in New Jersey. So we'll hit the highlight on that because Alina was also talking about this today, as we can see here. And we've got reaction. Questions. Should Tish face consequences from this? Absolutely. The answer is yes. Representative Claudia Tenney says maybe President Trump can file a civil rights claim. We can start with that under 42 U.S. Code 1983, see where that goes. And we also have got Peter Navarro, who went to jail because of corrupt Democrat prosecutor hacks, now saying Tish should go to jail. And of course, we agree. So we'll talk about it. Then we'll turn our attention to this case. You know this one right here. And we haven't talked about it in a little bit. We've been waiting for some orders to come down on the release of the grand jury records. And this came down, answer, denied, not getting our hands on any of those records. And what's so curious about this filing is that we learn, okay, we're always trying to peer inside. We're obviously not going to get the records. Can we tell anything about the records in the meantime? And the answer is yes. This judge explains what is in it, and it's like nothing. 56-page transcript, 14-page transcript, and a PowerPoint. It's like less than a novel. Oh my gosh. You can have ChatGPT spit out more than that. So we'll go through it. We'll see what is happening here. The judge is like, this is a joke. Is this whole thing a joke? And the answer is yes to that. Then we got some Biden news because this guy, you remember him, Ian Sams? He was in Congress today talking with James Comer and the Oversight Committee. And it turns out he met with Joe Biden twice the entire time he was his spokesperson. So we've got that story. James Comer came out. He spoke for quite a bit, explained what the aftermath of that conversation was. We'll talk about it. We also had this report over from our friends at Just the News, which is a big one, as you can see here, saying that the IRS was looking into the Clinton Foundation, and then suddenly they couldn't look into them anymore. And there's this whistleblower program, essentially. Like if you blow the whistle on somebody who's getting government money, you can get a percentage of the savings. Okay, so like if the Clinton Foundation is going to steal $100 million and you report it and you're responsible for recapturing some of that money that they were stealing from the U.S. government, you get a percentage of that. So these whistleblowers came out and they were trying to start this whole thing, and then can't do that. Sorry, Clinton's protected and she's got special privileges. So they cut that off pretty quickly. So we'll talk about that. We got James Comer, and Peter Navarro was also talking about this stuff. And so it's going to be a beautiful stream, my friends. We're very glad that you're here and with us. Thanks for subscribing to our channel if you haven't already done that. Thanks for liking the video, and thanks for considering becoming a member. We got Friday, tomorrow, Saturday. We got our Saturday members only stream. We'd love to have you come join us. It's a great way to meet other people in the community, grab some extra content in the morning, see what else is going on out there, join some live streams that are a little bit less busy. We can kind of let our hair down and talk about, Israel or whatever. And it's a lot of fun. So come join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, or on YouTube. You can click the join button. We really appreciate you supporting the show and all the things that we're doing here and being a part of our community. All right, now let's get to it because we got a big meatball to dig into today. Big Tish in New York obliterated, suffering a major loss on appeal. We've covered this case. We remember it was emanating out of Judge Engoron's courtroom. That Areola Engoron, who we talked a lot about, who had the bonus torso photo, who was sending emails to his classmates. Hey, look at my abs. Strange fella. But Tish came out, and Tishy was the one who, of course, was trying to take out Trump. And you remember her. We've talked a lot about Letitia, and got a judgment after a ridiculous battle where Judge Engoron was with his law clerk, his judicial clerk, and they were sitting at the same level. She was like tapping him on the foot. Alina Abba saying they're playing footsie. They moved the cameras around in the courtroom. The whole case was rigged as hell because they brought Michael Cohen in to testify, a convicted perjurer. And they went after other people like Trump's CFO, Alan Weisselberg, and they were trying to get him to flip on Trump, and the whole thing was ridiculous. So it went up on appeal, and we saw during oral arguments that Tish's lawyers were getting obliterated, and now the decision has come, and it's 323 pages. And so I want to start, we're going to do a little back and forth on this. So I'll start with a quick overview that the court gives us, and then I want to just pause and go through this mind map to explain how the remaining pages are going to unfold, because we've got a couple of different opinions here. Really, this Moulton opinion is the bulk of this thing. Then we've got this Higgett opinion, and then we've got the Friedman opinion. And really, the Friedman opinion, I think, is the most accurate and most honest. And so we'll go there in a quick second, but I do want to get some overview and some background on this. And of course, we remember what this was. Okay, the parties who were involved in this, we know, were Trump and basically everybody else. And what they said is about 20 million, 50 million, it was like $100,000 of interest a day was going to be the entire judgment. Trump needed to be disgorged of that because he got unlawful gains. And we covered this. It went there's a lot of history on this going all the way back to March 2020. And you remember Tishy was the one who was saying regularly that she was running for office to go after the Trump administration. She made it her campaign pitch. So the action commenced all the way in 2020. There were a bunch of injunctions. We had a bench trial, October to December 2023, post-trial. Then we got the judgment. We covered basically all of this here. We covered the trial, the excerpts courtesy of Inner City Press and others. And the final judgment was $464 million going after Trump. And of course, now we are hearing this case. And so let's go back to the decision and dive right in to get our bearings straight. Here they write, Judge Engoron. The background of this case, Areola Engoron, aka the Nip, issued an order, and now here is the decision. The first one that we talked about is from Moulton. He says, this is what's happening. Trump is appealing these decisions from Engoron, and he says, there's a couple judges here who are of the 5 who have decided that Trump is liable. Okay, so they say there's a big split. We got like 5 different judges, 3 different opinions. It's, overlapping. All agree, no, fine, it's done. But this guy says that they say, these 2 judges, Justice Renwick and I, we find that the Supreme Court, Areola, correctly found Trump liable in this rigged case with Michael Cohen, saying we agree with the judge that the Attorney General acted within her lawful power, like she's Big Tish, she can do this. And we also find that the judge didn't violate any statute of limitations arguments either. And there was a big argument on this that all of this was basically precluded, and they were just taking, the most recent one and bundling that in, and then going back and actually discussing other cases where the statute of limitations had expired, but the judge was just saying, well, I'm not going to make that a part of my judgment, but I will allow it admissible as evidence because it shows a pattern in a series of conduct that is detrimental to Trump, is what the judge said. So he just kind of carved it out. So they said, that's all fine. Now, this decision is one of 3 issued by the court today. We got these 2 other decisions. Justice Renwick and I agree with some of the other judges on some point. We agree with Justice Higgett, who's joined by Rosado, that the Attorney General could bring this action, right? Nobody's saying she can't. Like, she has the power to bring actions. She can't bring corrupt hack actions that exceed her power. But if she's got a legitimate case, nobody's making the argument that she can't do that. However, our remaining disagreements with our colleagues are profound. In some, Justice Friedman finds the Supreme Court's rulings are infirm in almost every respect, and would hold that the AG had no power at all. Now, he would dismiss the complaint outright. And Justice Higgett, while agreeing that the AG does have the power to bring this suit, finds that errors made require a new trial. And so this judge says, well, we cannot harmonize with our colleagues, and saying the record justifies what happened. The inevitable elapse of time and the difficulties mean we don't have to dig into this too much further, but none of the three decisions garners a majority. Higgett and Rosado join the decretal of this decision for the sole purpose of ensuring finality so that they can appeal, and TISH is going to appeal. And like Justice Friedman, we commend them for doing so. But unlike Friedman, we do not find that this necessary measure is unfair to Trump. This court previously imposed a stay on the judgment and more. Okay, so that's from the original judge. Now let's zoom back out on this puppy and go back to our mind map and see what we have happening here. So we're familiar with the procedural history. This judge, in the rest of this decision, it's a lot. And so he goes through in his decision the scope of the statute. Okay, it's very big, lots of analysis on it. And you can see he is assessing a bunch of different things. Now, ultimately, he's going to find that the statute of limitations is valid, right? 6-year statute of limitations applies, but everything that the lower judge did is essentially appropriate. But then we get to the final remedy, in his opinion. And so this judge comes out and he says, the disgorgement award of 464 is vacated. And a lot of this decision, right? In other words, the big Tish had the power to bring it. She could sue. Statute of limitations was fine. Evidence was fine. Trump's liable, all the things, except the remedy is bad. Okay. It's way too big. The available remedy under the Martin Act and under executive law has to be vacated. Okay. Because it's excessive fines in violation of the 8th Amendment. The fine is grossly disproportional to the gravity of the offense. And the AG did not carry the burden for reasonable approximation of profits that are causally connected, right? And that's a quote here. And that is the part, Tish is going to say that she's validated. But what this judge is saying is there's no causation to connect the two. And the reasonable likelihood judge analyzes a bunch of things and then finds that the ultimate sanction is bad and invalid. So that's the crux of that first opinion. Then we get the Higgett opinion, and we've also got the Friedman opinion. And we do want to spend a little bit more time on the Friedman opinion because it is quite good. And let's just jump to that right now. I believe it's this page. Boom. Fast forwarding all the way down to page 221 out of 323. And this is a judge who's also a part of the ruling, right? It's not like a dissenting opinion. He's concurring in part and dissenting in part. But the decision is the fines are gone. And so we'll now flesh this out on appeal. Tish is going to appeal it. So here's what he writes, concurring in part and dissenting in part on the liability part, saying Trump's not liable at all. He writes, executive law empowers the attorney general to bring a lawsuit seeking injunctive relief, restitution, and damages. And the provision that gives her the power to do this is to protect consumers from deceptive and misleading practices. Like she can't just sue people. There's a reason. Why? Protect consumers. Now that provision is intended to protect not only the average customer, but also the ignorant customers, the unthinking customers, and people who don't know any better. Now, in determining whether Tishy and her proof has met the standard of a capacity or tendency to deceive, which is going to be the requirement, certain elements of the claim may be relaxed. And he gives us some analysis. But this action is turning this law on its head. The leniency with which the courts have construed their requirements for pleading and proving fraud, which is a leniency that has been extended for the purpose of facilitating the use of this provision, is being used here by Attorney General James to apply this section to a scenario that has never before been applied or even thought to apply, just like they do regularly. Remember when they charged Trump, in the business fraud case, they had to go through the New York statute and it's going to be subsection E. Subsection E says other offenses could be under this provision, election law. And so we're going to put the spreadsheet crime and reconvert that into 34 felonies like that. Or when they did the 1512C stuff with the J6ers, remember that? They're like, This is like obstruction of documents. What? What? You just made it up. And they did it here too. And this judge is calling Big Tish out. He says the AG in this case has utilized the flexibility that's afforded to her to unwind complex financial transactions that were negotiated face to face at arm's length between privately held real estate organization, Trump, and the current president, and ultra sophisticated banks, insurance companies, government entities who were advised by equally sophisticated lawyers, accountants, and other business professionals. Everybody was doing it by the book. Trump made his estimate of his valuation. They made their estimate. They did business like any other transaction. The AG, though, complains, writes this judge, and the Supreme Court found that the statements of financial condition, right, those documents saying the building is this big, it's got this much, assets inside, this is what it's worth, all the things. Trump provided the counterparties. They said that he overvalued certain assets. Well, he counted that space, and that's not livable space. That's a closet or something, right? However, each of these that he submitted included written disclaimers, which we read, we covered this in the trial, saying in no uncertain terms that the valuations were estimates, okay? They have not been audited. They're my opinion, bro. So you just read it and make your decision. You can say, this is ridiculous. Come on, Trump. It's not worth $200 trillion. He's like, all right, well, maybe not. But billion, like, all right, so that's fine. So each counterparty was further warned that it should do its own due diligence in the documents and draw its own conclusions about Trump's net worth. And each counterparty actually did. They did it, as it was obligated to do because New York law says they have to do it. So everybody followed the law. Moreover, Trump paid all principal, all interest, all premiums that he owed. And no counterparty ever registered any complaint. No one complained. No banks ever said we got ripped off. Instead, Big Tish, the AG, began publicly accusing Trump of issuing fraudulent statements. But if any counterparty, any bank or any insurance company or financial agency had been dissatisfied with this transaction, it would have had the incentive and the resources to bring the claim. They could have sued through private litigation. And in fact, according to the AG, they could have won. But guess what? No one sued because they were never harmed. There was no fraud that needed to be disgorged. So on this appeal, writes this judge, Friedman, this is an appeal for nearly a $500 million judgment. I mean, we know we just spend billions of dollars like it ain't nothing, like trans operas in the sub-Sahara. But that's a lot of money. Think about your business or how much it took you to generate your first $1 million in revenue and how much work that is. $500 million. They took 500 of those away from the president. Illegally, unlawfully, by partisan hacks. Say two of my colleagues have cited scores of cases in an attempt to shoehorn this case into this other law, and they have gone so far as to claim that the AG, by bringing this action, has possibly saved the world from a replay of the financial meltdown in 2008, right? It's so great. How this might be is not explained, though. They don't really know. Now, despite their efforts, they're unable to point to a single precedent, not even one, for the use of this law to target the types of transactions that are at issue here, which are very clear, reasonable transactions, bilateral, negotiated, arm's length transactions between highly sophisticated parties, no effects on any public markets, and the parties were completely happy. These were total successes across the board. And so given the absence of any public interest in unwinding these deals, since everybody happy the buildings got made, New York got built, skyline's improving, I'm not going to pervert this law and stretch the scope of this provision to try to shove this claim in there like these other judges did. And moreover, even if bringing this action were within the scope of Tishy's power, the Supreme Court erred in granting her summary judgment as to liability on the first cause, and then rendering a decision after on all of the other causes, saying, here's what happened. Big Tish simply failed to prove her case because she's so pathetic. And she didn't even really do much. She sat behind the bar on that first row in the pews and took her shoes off. And Alina Abba was saying, put your shoes, you're stinking up the whole building, Tish. Accordingly, this judge would reverse the judgment and dismiss the complaint entirely. And so thus, while I concur with the vacature of constitutionally unsound and otherwise defective $500 million disgorgement, I dissent insofar as the main decree affirms the judgment as to liability and as to the award of non-monetary relief to the AG. And he continues saying, I note that of the 4 justices voting for the main decision, 2 of them, Justice Higgett and Rosado, do not actually agree with the resolution of the appeal for which they're voting. All right. So this judge is like, well, even the majority that says that Trump is liable, these 2 judges don't agree. Higgett wrote in his that he and Justice Rosado believe that the grant of summary judgment to TISH should be reversed. They said that. So actually, maybe the majority is that she doesn't have the power, but these guys just voted this way for whatever reason. The judgment should be vacated, and this case should be remanded for a new trial on all causes. So this judge, Friedman, says, I commend the other 2 judges for their selflessness in putting aside their personal views to allow this court to dispose of this appeal. Okay, so like, in other words, they're saying, and we just read it, that some of these judges will jump on the majority just to get some finality on it. Okay, just so that TISH can appeal it and we can close this thing out. But they're just doing that just for that reason. Like, they don't actually believe in the underpinnings of the holding. However, I find it remarkable that although a 3-justice majority of this 5-justice panel believe that the judgment in favor of TISH should not stand because she has not carried her burden of proof of proving a violation of the law, the result of the appeal is an affirmance of the judgment, albeit as modified to eliminate the disgorgement. So it's like a compromise. So to draw a sports analogy, he says, this is really weird what's happening here. It's as if a team is awarded a touchdown without crossing the goal line. Yeah. In any event, it seems to me that the result I would reach is more consistent with the other judges. Higgett and Rosado actually don't think that TISH won. They're just voting with the majority to close this out. And I don't know why they're voting this way. He says so. All right. So this leads me to explain why, I guess, given that I am alone on this panel, in my view that the complaint should be dismissed. And I am not voting for the result favored by Higgett and Rosado, namely the vacature of the judgment and a remand for new trial, saying we don't need a new trial. Okay, this whole complaint needs to go. First, I do not believe that we can ignore the fact that ordering a new trial in a case in which the primary defendant and a witness is the president for 3.5 years would disrupt the political life of America. So a new trial, so we could go through this whole thing again with another nipple judge from New York. Second, shout out to Viva. Second, while it is obvious from the divergence of opinions among the justices of this panel that this case calls out for further appellate review, and an order by this court directing a retrial is not immediately appealable. And it seems inconceivable to me, says this judge, that defendants would stipulate to a judgment that carries a $500 million reward against them. And even if these other judge, this Higgett is correct, the other concurring opinion, that neither side should have been granted summary judgment, I agree with the main judge, Moulton, that the record before us, which is 100 volumes comprising nearly 50,000 pages, is more than sufficient to decide this case. We don't need a trial, another one. And so the question is, did TISH prove her case? And she didn't. Writing. During the time period relevant to this action, Trump ran the Trump Organization. And then he ran for office and won. But in successfully campaigning for her current office, this is a judge in New York writing, Big Tish in 2018, she repeatedly vowed to pursue President Trump and his associates, including members of his family, through any available avenues of legal process. And the crazy New Yorkers were like, yeah, Tishy Poo, we love you. In March, only 2 months after she took office, Big Tish opened an investigation into Trump's businesses. And she was running this whole time with her facial spasms. Remember, illegitimate president, like just jumping out of her skin. On appeal to this court, from a proceeding to enforce a subpoena, we also had Michael Cohen come in and testify. So then on September 21st, 2022, we got civil enforcement action under this law. Trump, 24 other people or so, according to AG, on more than 24 occasions, or 2 decades ago, in the decade or two, ending in 21, Trump issued the fraudulent SFCs. Okay, we got it. The gravamen of the complaint is that Trump improperly qualified for favorable terms, didn't properly disclose things. We remember the background. Now, on appeal, Trump makes two arguments in support of his view, apart from any issue about statute of limitations or the propriety of the relief. First, Trump argues that TISH lacks standing because this vindicates no public purpose at all. This is just political harassment by the New York AG, saying that Trump's conduct had no impact on public interest at all. It was a private transaction with a bank. And any injury that may have been caused was sustained solely by the defendant's counterparties, which were fully capable of seeking redress for any harm done to them. Now, Trump and his documents neither had the capacity or the tendency to deceive. Nothing he did created an atmosphere conducive to fraud, and so it should be dismissed. Now, the first argument is standing. TISH doesn't have standing. Saying an argument they also made on another unsuccessful appeal of the denial of their motion to dismiss. But Moulton and Higgett reject that argument. Moulton, but apparently not Higgett, would reject the argument out of hand. He says, well, there's a doctrine of law of the case, and our earlier decisions say that she can stand and has standing. And so we're going to talk about preclusion, very boring. Preclusion, very boring. We'll fast forward. And so we'll just skip all of that. Now he says, now as to Justice Moulton and his suggestion that the counterparty, in this case the banks, he says, well, they may not be able to sue. Well, what happens if they, want to do business with Trump and they can't sue him because they want his business and they're like a disaffected party? His suggestion, he says, well, it might be too costly for the counterparty to pursue a claim, has no relevance in this case. The counterparties are extremely wealthy financial institutions, and it's the Attorney General's theory that they were defrauded of hundreds of millions of dollars, is what she said. If these banks and their insurance companies did not think it worth their while to go recover hundreds of millions of dollars, well, then it's not clear what public interest the Attorney General is vindicating. Like, if they don't care and they have an interest in it, why do you care? It is no answer to say, like the main judge does, that the purpose of this is to protect the public at large, right? Stupid platitude. Well, this is of course true. The question here is, what is the public at large? Did they have any transaction interest in this at all? No. Most incongruous of all is the main judge's attempt to justify TISH's intervention in these private transactions. What is she doing here? On the ground that this could, they wrote, the main judge, this could, quote, cascade into a disaster, which we constantly hear, right? Unless we do everything, we're all going to die. You're going to kill COVID, or illegals are going to fall out of airplanes or whatever. Says, on the order of the system-wide liquidity crisis, Trump's going to wreck the entire financial economy by getting loans with gigantic banks. Says here, Justice Moulton's resort to high-minded but overblown rhetoric, let's go, concerning the wreckage of the residential mortgage highlights his need to cast the run-of-the-mill transactions at issue into what they manifestly were not. High-risk financial acrobatics imperiling the global economy. Dorks is basically what he wanted to write. For the purpose of shoehorning in these transactions into the law. The theory of causation, saying that Trump could cause a 2008 economic meltdown, and so because he could, then that might be something that fits under this law, because it could be the public at large, because this could, what if Trump does it? Then everybody's going to do it, and then all the banks are going to be broke. Saying we're just going to make it fit in there and try to turn it into something that it isn't. Now, interesting footnote. He says the main judge asserts that the congressional testimony of Michael Cohen, the convicted perjurer and liar, that supposedly triggered the investigation of Trump, somehow took the transactions at issue out of the realm of run-of-the-mill, whatever that means. However, Cohen's vague and unsubstantiated contentions about the documents that were used are the same type of allegations filed every year in hundreds of thousands of cases, just like this. If anything about this case is not run-of-the-mill, you know what it is? It's TISH repeatedly making politically motivated promises to use her office to pursue one man and his businesses and family. She started making those promises long before Cohen gave his supposedly pivotal testimony, and also far from run-of-the-mill is the hyper fast tracking of the processing of this action until we got the appeal. The appeal took forever, which is unheard of in cases of this complexity. To take one example, the Supreme Court, Engoron, the areola, he set a trial date 5 days after it decided the party's motion for summary judgment. Remember, and they wanted to get it all done before the election because Letitia James is a co-conspirator in a nationwide, global, probably Democratic operation to use multiple legal avenues to take out the president. 4 criminal charges, multiple civil infractions from psycho ladies who paint their trees blue and talk about their vagina cats. And people like Tish, not to mention Griswold and the rest of them, tried to throw Trump off the ballot repeatedly, had to go to the Supreme Court to calm them down. However, as previously noted, none of the transactions here resulted in any publicly traded securities, had any impact on securities. The Trump organization doesn't even do that. And loans were part of broad categories, and everybody knew what the risks were. Now, there is a debate as to whether one of the chief causes of the failure in 2008, assuming that such a failure occurred, was a lack of government regulation. Yeah, that's right. Although Moulton's opinion appears to take that side in that debate, I don't see how that is a reason to come into this decision at all. Tish's prosecution of this action is not part of any coherent prophylactic government regulatory program, however wisely or poorly conceived. It was an unprecedented ad hoc intervention into a successful, discrete, private transaction that only impacted the 2 people involved. Now, Higgett, the other judge, he rejects my view that transactions between sophisticated parties, he says, well, we should count those, whether they should be excluded. And he offers his commentary in support of that. He says, well, Deutsche Bank, in dealing with high net worth people, should be treated by the AG that any consumers would be about their dishwashers or deceptive credit cards or anything else. Notwithstanding the rhetorical flourish, man, shout out to this judge, Justice Higgett is unable to suggest all this rhetorical flourish about credit card debt, misleading dishwashers, and well, see, that's why we skipped a lot of that crap in that major part. Says Justice Higgett is unable to suggest how any of the transactions at issue actually impaired the public interest at all, nor does he offer any concrete reason why, in the absence of that public interest, the monitoring and defense of the private interests should not be left to the people who, run the banks. In adopting Tish's reading of the statute, my colleagues are empowering her office to attack at will virtually any business transaction, regardless of its success or failure, and in the absence of any discernible effect on the public. This is because, as a moment's reflection will disclose if you just stop and think about it, a substantial business deal that goes awry, which even though none of the transactions here did, they typically will give rise to a claim by the losing party, saying, well, that was a fraudulent transaction. This is not surprising because it's pretty easy for inaccuracies to creep into these things. But Tish now has the power, according to them, to involve her office in any of these disputes, even if there is no fraud. If you say that this section of the law gives Tish the power to pore over private transactions, even successful deals years after they closed, because she wants to go find at least 2 inaccurate or disputable statements in a discretionary, subjective, disclaimed statement of financial conditions and make something up, it's ridiculous. She not even identifying any greater public interest at stake. In fact, the harm to public interest is what Tish is doing. And regrettably, the record makes plain that in this matter, we see an attempt to use this for political ends, this law. The proof of this is found not in anything written by me, but in the words of Tish herself. Specifically, as previously noted, Tishy, in her 2018 election campaign for her current office, repeatedly promised the New Yorkers who love communism and Tish that Trump would be the top priority. She said, I would bring him down. She made these statements long before 2019, when she thought that she was going to trigger all of this, said it long before Michael Cohen lied, a convicted perjurer, and a disbarred attorney, get him, in which he claimed that his former client conflated valuations. Michael Cohen, the convicted perjurer, they brought him in there, and Engeron's like, he's so dreamy. By far, the bulk of Cohen's testimony before the House concerned matters having no relevance to this action at all, and his testimony about the documents at the hearing was restricted to a handful of repetitive, conclusory, and unsubstantiated assertions that the documents contain inflated valuations. Here's what Cohen said. It was my experience that Mr. Trump inflated his total assets when it served his purposes, such as trying to be listed among the wealthiest people in Forbes, and deflated his assets to reduce his real estate taxes. He's like, okay, great. So you can take $500 billion from him, $500 million. Cohen, who, as he admitted during the hearing, is not a CPA, offered no analysis demonstrating the valuations were inflated of those documents. The SFCs, okay, so he's inflating the Forbes list, okay, and he's trying to reduce his taxes like everybody does. That doesn't mean fraud in another document, but the judge is like, well, it's close though. It's like a pattern there. Like, we need evidence, you maniacs. Furthermore, the next day in testimony before the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, Cohen admitted that he did not recall President Trump ever, quote, asking him to inflate the numbers in the documents, because he didn't. Now, given the sketchiness of Cohen's congressional testimony about these documents and his dubious credibility as a man who had just pleaded guilty, among other offenses, to willful tax evasion, making a false statement to a bank on a credit application, it's inconceivable. And, I think part of the deal was he gets a good deal on those things if he goes after Trump. Okay. It was a quid pro quo from the Biden DOJ and everybody else who was, trying to take Trump out in the election. Although that was 2022. So Trump would have been in office, but you get the same point, because this is a state level offense, not the DOJ. But Cohen, and by the way, to be clear, there was also what was his name? There was a deputy AG who left, I can visualize his name, left the DOJ, went over to work with Alvin Bragg. You remember who that guy was. So it was this big incestuous relationship across the board. So Cohen comes in here, he testifies, he gets a nice plea deal from the DOJ to make him a key witness. And TISH did the same thing with Alan Weisselberg. Remember, was trying to prosecute him so that he would be a useful witness against Trump. It is inconceivable, says this judge, that Michael Cohen's testimony would have triggered an investigation by TISH, but for the political considerations involved, right? Inconceivable. There's no attorney general who would take a convicted perjurer, tax evader, false statement, congressional liar, and use him as the crux of your investigation, unless you just needed an excuse. Those political considerations are amply attested by TISH's earlier campaign promises to use her office's power to go after Trump. And her promises to pursue Trump are matters of public record. You can see it. They're all cited in the record. For example, on September 28th, this Impact YouTube channel posted a video where she called Trump the illegitimate president. And man, let's see if we can, is this going to work for us? Here, let's see if we can pop that open in another tab. Yeah, because this might be the facial spasm twitch.
America is in uncharted territory. We are angrier and more deeply divided than we've ever been at any point in our history since the Civil War. And at the eye of the storm is Donald Trump, ripping families apart, threatening women's most basic rights. I'm running for Attorney General because I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president.
Yeah, there it is. Look at that facial spasm. Right there, man. That was a hell of a pause. Thank you for that click right there, the click gods. So you can see, right, facial spasms with this illegitimate president. She just can't take it, man. Just emanating out of her face. And so she said it. We know what she said. And she did this repeatedly. They're huge fans of talking this way. Says he's illegitimate, remember? And then they'll come out, lecture us like, well, Trump denied the election. She was OG. I believe the president should be indicted for criminal offenses, blah, blah, blah. So we know her story, but this judge does a great job chronicling it all, has it documented, says the AG also made similar statements while campaigning in 2018. All of that happened before Michael Cohen ever spoke at all. On June 27th, after the announcement of her candidacy, she posted on X that she looked forward to working with Democrats to take on Donald Trump. Now, although the webpage has been removed, her website apparently promised a review of Trump real estate and wondering why he suddenly started paying cash. Here, she called him an illegitimate president again, saying, I look forward to going into the AG's office every day. And the judge cites story after story. TISH, I've got my eyes on Trump Tower, blah, blah, blah. And, I want to point something out here on this, and I know this is not really, going to make a lot of people happy, but this will be used if there are indictments against, Brennan, Comey, Clapper, Obama, Clinton, any of them, Strzok, McCabe, pick them. They're going to do a very similar strategy, right? This is why it's not generally good advice for politicians to sort of talk about their offices. Now, the distinction here is that I think Trump can talk about his cases and these people because he was the victim of their crime, right? So I think that's an important distinction to point out, but the judges will do this, right? And you can see this. This is just a laundry list is really all this is. The judge, bop, 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 Tish, you're a hack, you're a hack, you're a hack, you're a hack. It's clearly evident. So and I'm not saying judges will find that Trump statements about, Comey, Strzok, Page, whatever, will fall into that category, but their defense attorneys absolutely will. They'll say vindictive prosecution, malicious prosecution. In fact, I think the LaMonica McIver, the body slam congresswoman, she is making those arguments now. Now, between winning the election in November 2018 and the Cohen testimony, Tish continued to make statements in a similar vein. In NBC News in 2018, she says, I'm going after anybody in his orbit, face spasming out all over the place. So he chronicles it. And now he says the main judge asserts that the political choice for the AG would have been not to bring this case. Yeah, right. She ran for office. It was her campaign promise, Judge. In the view of her campaign promises, Judge Moulton's statement could not be more at variance with the facts. She campaigned on it, Judge. And now he's saying, well, it can't be political because, why would she want to go after a private person? No, it was 2000. Yeah, okay. So yeah, our timelines are good. So the implicit characterization of the AG's commencement of this action as an apolitical course also ignores the polarized political environment that prevails today. And while no one would deny that Trump is a powerful adversary, he was a private citizen. He was an individual capacity at the time. He was not the president. And to be clear, I do not contend that Tish's promises or the infirmity of Cohen's testimony would preclude her from bringing proceedings against Trump if there was an actual public interest, right? But if she has the law and the facts to do it. However, after having conducted an investigation of 3 years, all that Tish came up with was a claim that Trump inflated property valuations in bilateral arm's length dealings with ultra sophisticated banks without any of them seeking any redress for their complaints. None of the sophisticated counterparties even raised complaints. They said Trump paid every dollar he owed on time. Nothing in the misconduct is even alleged misconduct has the slightest bearing on the public interest, right? No public misconduct. No attorney general had ever brought suit before based on such a set of facts until Tish. Well, she is historic, that's for sure. And so in sum, says this judge, the words of the attorney general herself establish beyond a reasonable doubt that contrary to the view of my other colleagues and judges, this action was commenced not to vindicate the public interest in securing an honest marketplace, or in Justice Moulton's terms, to maintain market hygiene. This was brought out of partisan political motives. Now, whatever one may think of Trump's character and policies, the law was not enacted for the attorney general to go beat her opponents of her political party. But the way this is being used here, arbitrarily, selectively, and politically, and the way it's going to be used in the future as a result of my colleagues and their approval of an entry of judgment for Tish, is the problem. Now, as expressed by someone else in amicus, our approval of this will allow political partisans to arbitrarily pick and choose whom to punish and whom to favor. So the precedent for this is being created by the court, and it's going to probably intensify. My colleagues' elimination of any requirement that a judgment be supported by public interest proof will inevitably make the use of the statute so selective and arbitrary, we're going to even have serious doubts about its constitutionality, whether they can even do this. And we're probably going to have a First Amendment problem on this too. Now, although not directly on point, the Supreme Court was on another case, now asking about fraud. And so the decision continues to go on. And so let's go back to the mind map and flesh out the rest of his decision to see what we've got. And we have, the main nuts and bolts here. So overall conclusion is that he says, now this is not going to be the majority holding, that the complaint should be dismissed. He says the disgorgement award should be vacated. And he says there is no liability and she's not entitled to any other monetary relief at all. And so President Trump was very happy about this. He posted, he said, total victory in the fake New York State Attorney General Letitia James case. I greatly respect the fact that the court had the courage to throw out this unlawful and disgraceful decision that was hurting businesses all throughout New York State. Others were afraid to do business there. The amount, including interest and penalties, was over $550 million. It was a political witch hunt in a business sense, the likes of which no one has ever seen before. This was a case of election interference by the city and the state trying to show illegally that I did things that were wrong, when in fact everything I did was absolutely correct and even perfect. Every single dollar was thrown out, even the penalties imposed by us by the corrupt judge, Ariola Engeron, one of the most overturned in history, Arthur Engeron. Man, he's going to have to put that in his newsletter. I wasn't given a jury, and during the course of the trial, which lasted a long time, was not giving one ruling in my favor by this political hack. But worse than him, if that's possible, was Letitia James, a corrupt and incompetent attorney general who only brought this case in order to hurt me politically. She is a Trump-deranged lunatic. They made me bond the outrageous sum, which has never happened before, which cost me millions of dollars a month. It should have never been allowed to happen, and everyone knew it. Importantly, the vote was 5-0, all of it's disgorged, although as we know, there's nuance to it. It should have never happened. I'm so honored by Justice David Friedman's great words of wisdom, which should be read by everyone. We just read it, Mr. President. I would also like to thank the court for having the courage to make this decision, which is already going down as one of the worst business persecutions in the history of our country. Sadly, there are other cases against me that are equally disgraceful, including those headed by corrupt judges like Juan the Con Mercan in the business fraud case, 34 felonies. Also, with Michael Cohen, says, disgraceful, whose daughter collected millions of dollars in fees from crooked Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, while her daddy judge father shockingly refused to recuse himself from a vicious and corrupt trial, which is also under appeal. One in which every legal pundit in New York said there was no case. Even editorial board said, do not do this. But Judge Mercan gave me an unprecedented gag order, because he was also part of the Democrat onslaught to try to stop Trump before 2024. Many lawyers and judges, appellate judges, including the gag order, not letting me talk about him or his Democrat daughter, or the fact that the appellate judges thought he should not be doing the case, but he did it anyways. Many lawyers said that his daughter and him created the greatest conflict of interest they had ever seen. Judge Lewis Kaplan, the other remaining case, which is the E. Jean Carroll case, the vagina painter, says the other remaining case whose wife, family, and friends attended his two trials is as mean and nasty as anyone I've ever met. Judge Lewis Kaplan brought his wife, family, and friends to the trials? Like it's a show? What a loony. Is as mean as nasty as anyone I have ever met. That case, also on appeal, should also have never been brought. And that was really concocted by George Conway and Molly Jongfast, whatever she does. Is as mean and as nasty as anyone I've ever met. That case is on appeal. And he should be admonished for abuse and every other thing that can be thrown at a corrupt judge. He loved the publicity and would not let us present irrefutable evidence that we wanted to present. The Clinton-appointed judge should not be allowed to get away with this scam. These were all political trials in an effort to destroy my viability as presidential candidate before, during, and after the election. They were strongly coordinated with the Biden-Harris campaign and will go down in history as the most corrupt cases ever brought. These two cases are even more ridiculous than the corrupt Letitia James case and will be found out to be so in the very near future. All these judges should be ashamed of themselves for allowing them to happen. They are political hacks who did everything possible to hurt me as a candidate. This was an attack by the Biden-Harris administration on their political opponent, me! It is such an honor to have withstood it, thrived, and even become the president of the United States despite the horrible things that were done to me. I'd like to thank and congratulate my son, Eric Trump, and all of the many people in the Trump organization that fought so strongly for justice. My legal team refused to give up against heavy odds. This is a great day for New York City and state. From President Trump. A well-deserved celebration. My goodness, he deserves every word of that. So does the Trump org and the rest of the family who's there, who's gone through this, because this was just one prong of a multi-prong and multifaceted attack. And it was a big one, $500 million that's been just like taken from you because TISH decided to run for office and her communist Democrats in New York support this type of law. Now, victory, vindicated. Trump's not paying them a dime. And TISH says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to appeal this. She said she's not posting comments like this anymore. Remember those? Hey, TISH, where's your new countdown? You want to repost a $0.00 there, TISH? Because you're not getting it. So here's what she posted. The First Department today affirmed the well-supported finding of the trial court. Not really, like kind of. Those two judges who voted for it were just doing it to bring finality to the case. His company and his two children are liable for fraud, whatever. This court upheld the injunctive relief we won, limiting Trump and the ability of his officers to do business in New York, whatever the details of that are. And so whatever what she says the limitations are, like they have to check in with somebody or something, it should not be lost to history. And I think they do. I think they actually have to file reports to Engeron. So it's like minor just oversight. Actually, remember they appointed a special master or whatever to keep track of things, who's getting paid by Trump, right? In front of one of the judge's friends. It should not be lost to history that the president violated the law and that our case has merit. It doesn't really. We will seek appeal to the Court of Appeals and continue to protect the rights and interests of New Yorkers. Womp. So Tish will fight and probably get obliterated again because she's legally incorrect. Now, what's so funny about this is she's posting this also, I think yesterday before this decision came down, obliterating everything she's ever stood for. James said, New Yorkers are tired of scammers trying to steal their money or private information from robocalls. And we always work to protect people from fraud, which is wild because she's under investigation right now for mortgage fraud. And she's still posting about protecting people from fraud. She also just got a $500 million fraudulent judgment reversed. And she's the biggest fraudster that we can see in New York City entirely. Now, Alina Abba celebrating. Alina Abba was one of the attorneys working on the case. We got to hear a lot from her back during the trial. She says today's ruling by the New York Appeals Court is a resounding victory for President Trump and his company. The court struck down the outrageous and unlawful $464 million penalty, confirming that what we have said from the beginning. Tish's case was politically motivated, legally baseless, and grossly excessive. Trump won, and justice won with him. Now, Alina Abba had a bad decision today, so we had a very nice victory in New York. Had a tough decision for Alina Abba in New Jersey. We'll see what they do in response to this, whether they appeal this or where this goes. But this was a decision saying that Alina Abba is not a valid attorney there in New Jersey. And remember, there was some funny business going on here where she didn't get approved, confirmed by the Senate. So then she didn't have her position. Somebody else came into that position. They fired that person. She refused to leave. And Alina, because Alina took that position, slotted back into the same position. Remember that? Well, the judge just ruled on it and says, actually, in this criminal case, so these criminal defendants are saying she's unlawful. Like she's like not a real boy like Jack Smith. And the judge came down and found accordingly. Says the executive branch says that she is the U.S. attorney through a novel series of moves and has disagreed with a bunch of judges. But faced with questions about this and whether Abba is lawfully performing her duties, I conclude that she is not. And so we know the background on it. And so accordingly, they say that this motion is granted in part and denied in part, which looks like they submitted a filing to basically preclude her from working on the case. And the judge is granting that. So we'll see what Alina Abba does, but a victory in New York, a little bit of a setback in New Jersey. And we've kind of expected this was going to be the outcome in this matter, but we have no doubt she'll find a very nice position somewhere else. Miranda Devine had a great comment on this saying, why did this appeal take so long, by the way? Why did they wait? There was an 18-month delay, and we got great questions here, right? Have you heard on that case? No, man, we're checking all the time. Hadn't heard on it. But Miranda looked it up. She said, actually, it was 18 months, and that is 3 times longer than the average wait in New York, because they wanted it to just hurt, man. If you have Trump's $500 million, then he doesn't have it, So it was 3 times as long. Not a complex decision. They all had to write their own decisions on it, but we got the ruling. Now, speaking of mortgage fraud, this was a pretty weird clip. So we know we've got these 3 people, Letitia James, Adam Schiff, and Lisa Cook over at the Federal Reserve, who are all committing mortgage fraud. It's like, well, no wonder they don't think there's a problem out here with mortgage rates or interest rates or the American economy, because they're all cheating on all their documents. And here is what this guy said at the Jackson Hole Summit. Hilarious. So this is another Fed president. He's like, well, somebody should check this guy's mortgage documents because he doesn't seem like he's too familiar with all the paperwork.
We have responsibilities as professionals inside the Federal Reserve. I'm sure she'll handle matters as she needs to handle them.
Is that a serious thing to do, to write primary residence on 2 different mortgages?
Let me say this. It's definitely part of the application.
Yeah.
But I also would say if you think about how huge that application is, maybe we could start thinking about how do we make it less paperwork intensive as we go forward. Do you worry?
It's complicated, Bill Pulte says, what a weird response that is. So hopefully Bill just did a little search on his mortgage documents, see what he's got. No. It's very complicated for the Federal Reserve president from Kansas City. It's hard to read documents, financial documents. They're a lot of work. Nobody likes to read them, but you run the Federal Reserve. So we're going to keep our eye on that. Now, with TISH and Engeron and all these corrupt Democrats, question is, what do you do about that? Representative Claudia Tenney says maybe Tish should face a civil lawsuit for damages for what she's done. She writes, Trump was forced to pay over $110,000 per day in interest on that unlawful bond brought by Tishy Letitia. Claudia Tenney is out in New York herself, says crooked Tish James and Engeron should both be disbarred and removed from office for malicious prosecution and abusive process. And Trump should sue them and file a civil claim under 42 U.S. Code Section 1983 for deprivation of rights. And we think that hopefully is coming soon. So Navarro was out. Peter Navarro was asked about this today, and he concurs. He says Letitia should be in jail.
Else you got? Anybody on this?
Speaking of lawfare, today,
Yes, sir.
the New York Appeals Court has thrown out President Trump's $500 million New York civil fraud penalty. That was prosecuted by Letitia James last year.
Yeah.
The Appeals Court says it was, quote, excessive. What is your reaction?
Letitia James is another one that belongs in jail. Look, the Democrats, they really overplayed their hand on this because they thought they could take Donald Trump out. They didn't. And in the process, they totally destroyed American people's faith in our Justice Department. And they got him got President Trump a lot of votes because of that. I mean, the book I wrote about it, I went to prison so you won't have to. The whole theme of that thing is that I'm the wake-up call. If they can come for me, they can come for you. So people need to understand that these are bad people. Letitia James, Fonnie Willis in Georgia, Alvin Bragg in Manhattan. The question is, how coordinated were they? And that's a question that needs to be answered by an investigation.
Yes, it does, Peter. Hopefully Pam Bondi was listening to that one, because these were little terroristic Democrat coup cells that were set up all across the country. little cabals of people all working together in parallel to stop Trump. Multiple legal attacks. They had secretaries of states rigging machines the day before, going in there, updating BIOS passwords outside of actual standards. And the list goes on and on. So, tremendous victory for President Trump. The fine is now gone, and Tish says she's going to appeal it. But the New York Supreme Court, which is not the highest court, has found in favor of the president. Been a long time coming. Congratulations to the team and to America for defeating this partisan political hack. All right, so good stuff on that one. Now, we're not done yet. We got some good business to attend to still, including on this case. And, there's another curious one that we've got here. We got this. More questions and fewer answers in this case. We have been waiting for some time for the grand jury transcript ruling. We've already seen other cases where the judge said, you don't actually need those records because grand juries are very secretive. And if you come to us with a generic public interest that you want these records, it's not going to be sufficient. Now, we know that we're not going to get our hands on the records, but we're not done. We want to know if we can glean any information about the records. And this was very surprising to me. I wanted to share it with you. But ultimately, in summation, what we're going to find here, this decision came down from Richard Berman, the judge there in the Southern District of New York. And the grand jury records are basically nothing, okay? 56 pages plus 14 pages plus a PowerPoint and a call log exhibit. That's it. Almost nothing in there. The government does not attempt to tailor specific items within the record, nor does the government seek leave to disseminate the grand jury materials to a specialized audience. They just want to release it to everybody. But not a single victim was called to testify before the grand jury. Not one. In fact, the only witness in the grand jury a massive, sprawling criminal investigation has been going on for decades. The only person was a law enforcement FBI agent who had no direct knowledge of the facts of the case and whose testimony was mostly hearsay. No financial crimes, nothing, just this one dude, no victims. The grand jury materials in question include the following. This is what we were trying to get our hands on, okay? And the DOJ knows this too. The grand jury materials, they say a 56-page transcript of the agent's presentation. He's like, that's all you want? 56 pages is like a pamphlet. Man, the Costco coupons are bigger than that. A 14-page transcript of the agent's presentation on July 2nd, 14 pages, is the size of this document that we're reading right now. There was also a PowerPoint exhibit shown to the grand jury. So a slide deck, congratulations, and a call log. That's it, man. This is the whole case. For one of the most prolific traffickers of all time. 56 plus 14, 70 pages of materials. Incredible. Now, the grand jury convened on June 18th and July 2nd, and he died a little more than 6 years ago. Now, the government has suggested that interest in this case peaked recently after they didn't give us anything. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, hey, maybe Pam Bondi, when she released that binder, it's like everything she had. It is. It's like 70 pages. It's all she just printed it out a couple times. You think we should go to Staples or Kinko's? No, just use the printer. It's not that much. So just print everybody a copy. Like, all right. That's all it was. And we know what was inside those binders, and it was all previously released stuff, but it's like, oh, well, I guess there's not much in it. Maybe Pam Bondi was right. It was on her desk because Maureen Comey brought one dude in with a PowerPoint to clean up and mop up this whole thing. Okay. This whole case is so corrupt. It's shocking. We read through Letitia Cantrell's indictment, which is longer than 14 pages, and saw all of the evidence of her crime. Like, they investigated her actually. They knew how many text messages she sent and put that in the indictment. You imagine what the grand jury records look like? Not 70 pages. It's a scam. All right, so we have a corrupt government continuing. The Second Circuit has found that the public interest often spans several decades, and courts have granted unsealings in cases that occurred decades ago. But now this dude is dead. All right, so what's the current status of everybody? He's dead. His estate has taken no position on this, knowing nothing's going to happen. And what are we releasing? The material that is in the document is grand jury material. In this case, is grand jury materials. And it was sufficient to obtain the indictment of him, but not more. And because he died before trial, the material was never presented to a trial jury and was never subjected to examination and cross-examination. It was the hearsay testimony of one FBI agent. Insane. The government has estimated that some grand jury information became public in the other criminal trial that we covered a lot here. And because this case never went to trial, because, you know, he's dead, most of the grand jury material did not become public. Doesn't matter. It was like 70 pages. Who cares? I mean, unless it's like a list of names, which it clearly isn't because the whole thing's a mop-up. Desired material refers to the government's investigative trove about the case, right? The investigative trove is everything in the case file, not just the small sliver of the pie that is fed to the grand jury. What's in the rest of the binder? What's in the rest of the case file? The government has so far withheld these materials from the public. Now, very recently, the government announced that it was going to make these materials public, presumably piecemeal, in response to a congressional subpoena, because even the Democrats want it. The government's complete information trove would better inform the public about the case. Now, the only witness who presented before the grand jury was the FBI law enforcement agent. And the judge put that in bold. Like, the judge's like, what? The only witness, this judge is also going, this is whacked, is the FBI agent, still alive. And because the dude died before trial, the government moved the court for an order of dismissal. And no evidence ever came out. Incredible. The same agent testified in the other grand jury. She was found guilty of conspiracy to entice minors, transporting minors, trafficking, a conspiracy that only involved her and Epstein. She was convicted of conspiracy and trafficking a minor to him and to her. That's all. Now, there was a second witness in her grand jury, which was a New York Police Department detective too. No victims there. Maxwell's convictions were affirmed by the Second Circuit. Now she's going to the Supreme Court. But no victims were called to testify in the first grand jury. Victims did have the opportunity to speak in public when they dismissed the case after he was dead. And as noted, 23 victims spoke movingly about their horrific experiences at the hearing. Now, according to the government, there are over 1,000 victims. It's difficult to know exactly how many victims favor unsealing or how many favor continued sealing. It's also likely that victims who favor disclosure do so on the assumption that their safety is going to be protected. And so the materials are subject to the rules of criminal procedure. And the information, this is an interesting sentence, the information contained in the grand jury transcripts pales in comparison to the Epstein investigation information and the materials in the hands of the DOJ. Yeah, which is what we've said from the beginning. For the reasons stated above, the request to unseal the transcripts are denied from the judge. And let's see if there's anything else here saying the government also concedes that they don't even meet the exceptions of the rule. Yeah. And the government is the party seeking disclosure. A significant and compelling reason here is that the public wants a trove of the documents. But as he explains, there's nothing in there. The government is the logical party to make the disclosure. But by comparison, the instant grand jury motion appears to be a diversion from the breadth and the scope of the files already in the government's possession. Yeah, it's just I think I don't know if it's necessarily like a diversion to distract us from something, but it is, I feel like a token effort. We read it. We said that at the time when we read it. And we like Todd Blanche, but he filed a motion. He's like, pfft. Dorks like Rob out there, like screaming at us, Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. We don't think there's anything there, is what Todd said, but they do. So we just shut them up and release the files already. Thanks, Todd. The grand jury testimony is merely a hearsay snippet of his alleged conduct. Now, in February, the government was prepared to release the files. We know, we were waiting. We're like, oh, perfect. But then the government said no, because Trump reversed it. Now, there's another compelling reason not to unseal this, and they're threats to the victims. Some victims want to keep them sealed. Others do not. Some victims did not have sufficient notice and were not given a proper opportunity to review this. We also had comments come in from a bunch of people through their lawyers. And so it favors a continual seal. And this dude is dead anyways. And there are important considerations about victims' rights. And it finally became a public interest, but the government's interest in releasing it to the public just because there's a generic public interest is not sufficient to override the rules. And so, man, there's nothing in there. Okay, so it was an operation. He was prosecuted just like Diddy to go clean up the evidence or to stop the evidence from coming out. And our DOJ is just like allowing it to smolder into the ash bin of history. All right. So no more records there. Of course, they can release more. I think ultimately the story is just going to, we'll just move on. And eventually the answer is just going to be a no, like you're not getting anything. We're getting close to that. So we'll see. Of course, Congress is going to keep digging into it. They're going to get some records. I don't think the story's going away, but the courts kind of at a dead end. So no records for us. We'll keep our eye on this one. All right. And we got one more update on the day. And this was a pretty interesting one. You remember this guy, Ian Sams. He was the Biden White House spokesman for quite some time. We saw him all over the place on the media. Joe Biden is spry, man. He's doing backflips every day. He does Sudoku in like 5 minutes, and he's really good at Wordle. We knew the truth. He came in today for a transcribed interview, they're calling it. We can call it a deposition or whatever you want, but it's a conversation they're having. And Comer said this. Think about it. He's going to give us an explanation of what went down. I had more FaceTime with Joe Biden than his own spokesman, Ian Sams, did. In fact, Robert Hur probably spent more time with Joe Biden than Ian Sams ever did. He had no standing to say Joe Biden was, quote, on top of his game, because he was not. Now, here's a little bit from Comer. He came out and he was talking about this today. He said Ian Sams interacted with Joe Biden twice. That's all.
Wow. That was probably the most informative transcribed interview / deposition we've had thus far.
Wow.
I'll give Mr. Sams credit. He answered our questions. And I think one of the most shocking things to me is, and you'll have to remember, because many of you quoted every word he said religiously, throughout his entire tenure as the White House spokesperson. He communicated with Joe Biden 2 times. He saw Joe Biden, talked to Joe Biden 2 times, the entire stint as White House spokesperson. But yet he would every day tweet and issue statements from the podium of the White House, combating everything that we were doing in the Oversight Committee with respect to the investigation, combating the Hur report, saying he didn't know. In fact, Robert Hur spent more time with Joe Biden than Ian Sams. Think about that. Robert Hur spent significantly more time with Joe Biden than Ian Sams did. So when we would ask questions, well, you said this, did Joe Biden tell you that? And well, I got it from the president. Did Joe Biden tell you this? Did Joe Biden send you an email himself? Well, no. So it raises serious concerns and serious questions about who was calling the shots in the White House. If the White House spokesperson is being shielded from the President of the United States, who was operating the Oval Office? I mean, this is what this whole investigation is about. That auto pen was used excessively, and yet no one can say for certain that Joe Biden was given the was given the orders to use the auto pen. And if you're using the auto pen to sign one document and Joe Biden's in the White House, 75% of the time when the document's used, why not have Joe Biden sign the document right there? Why have to go through all the bureaucracy of using the auto pen? I mean, this was a huge interview today, and I think it contradicts everything that the former Biden people are saying with respect to the president's mental fitness. There were very few people that were around Joe Biden, especially at the end. And that's when the majority of the pardons and executive orders were signed with that auto pen. I mean, I can't say this enough. I want to say this one more time so everyone understands. Ian Sams, who was the White House spokesperson for a significant amount of Joe Biden's time as president, interacted with him 2 times. 2 times. So, we're going to continue to bring people in. And again, this person, Ian Sams, is the one that would counter everything Robert Hur, or anytime anyone would suggest that Joe Biden wasn't mentally fit, he would say, no, he's at the top of his game. Every time he tweeted out, and several times he gave interviews on MSNBC. Every time I've interacted with the president, he was sharp. He asked great questions. In there, under oath, he interacted with the president 2 times, the entire time.
That's crazy. Okay, I just looked it up. It says Ian Sams served as spokesman for the White House counsel's office under Joe Biden, May 2022 until August 2024. 2 years and 3 months. And he spoke to him twice. So that's once a year for the president's spokesperson, who was on the cables all the time, constantly telling us about how amazing he was.
The entire time he worked in the White House.
Crazy.
It's astonishing. Any questions?
Did he tell you what those 2 times were? Like, do you know what those 2 interactions
No,
were?
he really didn't have a good memory of the 2 times he interacted with the president, which would make me think that he didn't interact with him very long. Let this sink in. Not only did Robert Hur interact longer with
for 2 days, multiple hours,
with Joe Biden than Joe Biden's own spokesperson, I interacted more with Joe Biden than Joe Biden's spokesperson. I flew on Air Force One with Joe Biden to Kentucky when we had a tornado. I talked to him on Air Force One. Ian Sams never flew on Air Force One. Do you recall a president's spokesperson not traveling with the president when he traveled? He never went on Air Force One. I've been on Air Force One with Joe Biden.
Did he say, though, in his 2 interactions with him that the president was mentally sharp?
Oh, of course he did. Yeah, well, he had to. He said that in front of you all 100 times.
But in there, when he announced you'd only been with him twice, during those 2 times, did he describe the president as mentally sharp?
Well, he had to, absolutely, because he said that, for hours and hours and hours of press conferences and TV interviews on.
They pumped Joe up full of amphetamines, and they're like, Ian, come on over here. Got 5 good minutes. Just come say hello, and we'll settle some things.
MSNBC and CNN.
Did you get any indication about what kind of legal advice the White House counsel, I mean, he was a spokesperson, like what the White House counsel was giving Biden as far as legal advice for using?
Well, he said that most of his talking points came from White House counsel. So, again, this is the president's spokesperson who has no communication with the president. It leads to further concern that Joe Biden was not the one calling the shots. And that's what this entire investigation is about. We went through lines in the Hur report where Hur specifically stated that the president's memory was poor, his ability was limited, and and then I went back and asked questions about the Biden investigation, the influence peddling investigation, because if you'll recall, he attacked me every day, saying that there was no evidence and all this. I said, do you stand by that? And he never would answer the question.
Of course not.
I said, were you surprised that Joe Biden pardoned his entire family? And he said he was surprised. I said, is that an admission of guilt? I mean, he pardoned the spouses. The only place in the world the spouses were ever mentioned was in our final report. And he pardoned the entire family. It is his last act as president. And I think that everyone in America knows that was an admission of guilt. So, again, I think this is explosive. When you all read the transcript, I think you will agree. This was the White House spokesperson.
Good.
It just
release it.
It just pours fuel on the fire that Joe Biden was not the one making the decision with respect to who was using the auto pen.
Do you have a sense of how many times President Biden used the auto pen in the last couple of years of his administration?
Yes, we've looked at all of that.
How much?
Well, there were thousands.
Yeah.
But it was the most prolific use of the auto pen was after the president dropped out.
Did Ian Sams have any information about nefarious use of that? I mean, you're talking about what he didn't have much.
No, he wasn't in the loop. I mean, this
talk
guy, in his defense, he was not in the inner circle. Okay, but he was the spokesperson. I've read presidential history books. I'm sure you all have as well. I mean, do you ever know of the White House spokesperson not having access to the president?
Sir, he was not the main White House spokesman.
But he spoke every day for a year.
You're describing him as the
and we're bringing in the main spokesperson, Ms. Jean-Pierre, very soon. So,
what has Democrats' questioning been like?
The Democrat questions may have lasted 3 minutes. They let him read an opening statement, and they did their basic, what's your favorite color, and who's your favorite cartoon character. I'm exaggerating
That's
that,
great.
but that was pretty much.
So you're getting to the end here. You've got 3 more interviews that are at least scheduled. What are the potential outcomes here? Are legislation, charges? What are we looking at?
Well, we'll just have to see. And again, we'll release all the transcripts once everyone has testified. We want to make sure that everyone's testimony is consistent. But I think we're seeing a pattern here, a pattern that would suggest Joe Biden was not leading the White House. And with respect to the auto pen, we'll have a lot more to say about that at the end of the investigation. So thank you all very much for being here.
All right, so good report on that. I'm looking forward to getting those transcripts and seeing what went down in those. We know Bill Barr was there. There's going to be a bunch of other people coming in the foreseeable future. And at the end of the game, we're going to see maybe Bill and Hillary Clinton. And they're in big trouble too, because their crimes are deep. And here was a nice report from Just the News, and it's a big one. So I'll reference it over for you to zoom in on in further detail over at justthenews.com. But Jerry Dunleavy and John Solomon posted this thing, and they've got a lot of good details on this. But basically, what happened is there's a program in the U.S. government. If you can identify theft of government funds, you can get a percentage of the money that you save the government. So it's like a whistleblower payment cuts. And you can make good money off of it, right? Depending on how much you save. So here's what happened. Now, years after the FBI was forced to shut down multiple corruption probes of Bill and Hillary, the IRS began a criminal tax investigation into the Clinton Foundation. But then they stopped abruptly working on it with the whistleblowers. And they got their hands on the memo. Someone said, can't talk about the CF, the Clinton Foundation, a memo states, in recounting how IRS agents suddenly cut off contact with 2 of these whistleblowers who said they're taking money they had been working with for weeks. One of the whistleblowers was a decorated former federal money laundering analyst who had testified before Congress. The new documents released under FOIA add to a new body of evidence about the federal government's concerns about the First Family's charity. John Moynihan, a retired DEA person, and Larry Doyle had spent years researching the Clinton Foundation, and they're currently pursuing 2 separate whistleblower cases now coming up for trial in December, right? So this case is referencing documents from the IRS Criminal Investigations Division. So Just the News got the memos, and here's what they submitted, this IRS Form 211, right? This could have given them a financial reward if the taxpayer funds were recovered. If they share information, Clinton Foundation stealing $100 million, the U.S. government gets that back, these dudes would get a cut of it. So Just the News reviewed the notes and the emails, and the IRS appears to have moved from a serious initial interest in April 2019 in pursuing Clinton to slamming the brakes allegedly claiming that such an inquiry couldn't and wouldn't be launched after all. All activity had petered out by July 2019. Now, the whistleblowers filed applications for awards to investigate 5 nonprofits. They called it a whiteboard chart in mid-February 19. The whistleblowers also filed an application to get paid for this. In 2019, the whistleblowers then filed new applications for awards, and they took notes on their half-dozen meetings with IRS criminal investigators with meeting dates ranging from late January to mid-2019. April, the notes found in large part, it was all about the Clinton Foundation and CHI, Clinton Health Access Initiative, CHI. Now, internal emails show IRS office initially taking serious interest in the case. The meeting notes by Doyle and Monahan repeatedly indicate they wanted to formalize a relationship. They wanted to call them informants, whistleblowers, cooperating witnesses. But then they said, sorry, soon purportedly told them we can't talk about the CF. Swift reversal from what they were doing originally. The emails also include evidence that the Clinton Foundation was also being looked at by the U.S. Attorney in Texas and the Western District. The Hill previously reported thousands of pages of documents have come in, and they're as corrupt as it gets. But now they're getting looked into, and we're getting documents that are coming out. We have a trial on that coming up soon as well. So Comer was out. We had Navarro was out. He said something like, it's Clinton, it's Comey, it's Page, it's Clapper, it's Brennan, it's Schiff. It's everybody, including the Clintons. They all need to be held accountable.
My favorites, but just be cool. So what I want to talk first about is about, there's an article that appears today in Breitbart News, which deals essentially with an FBI agent named Walter Giardina, who was recently fired by Kash Patel, the FBI director. And the media, led by the New York Times, is trying to make this guy a martyr. And this is the same guy that put me in handcuffs, put me in leg irons, and
on an airplane.
A totally unnecessary arrest with armed FBI agents at Reagan Airport. And Perk bought my fiance, and he's a man who I will now show you really helps understand what has been a long-term, consistent, weaponized attack on Donald John Trump going back to 2016.
And exonerating the Democrats.
We start
Hillary and
with
Clinton.
the Steele dossier. Christopher Steele writes this thing paid for by Hillary Clinton. It was always a propaganda piece.
Yep.
And it became the catalyst for the Russia hoax, Crossfire Hurricane. And the first thing that Giardina did was, and this is all alleged by whistleblowers, everything I'm telling you is from whistleblowers that were reported through, and thank you, Senator Chuck Grassley, for getting this information out. He's doing a wonderful job on this. Giardina was one of the FBI agents who blessed the Steele dossier, who basically vouched for its authenticity and therefore said Crossfire Hurricane on its way. That was a complete hoax that cost tremendous amounts of political capital, harmed the president, and was just wrong. Now, at the same time, there was a separate operation going on, and it was called, I'll call it the Egyptian hoax. It was codenamed Crimson River. And they later renamed it Red Masari. It was an allegation that the Egyptian government had given $10 million to the Trump campaign. It was total BS, just nothing there. Again, Giardina played a central role in propagating that and then using that to do these investigations, do the leaks, do the smear tactics on Donald Trump. Now, Crossfire Hurricane allowed Giardina then to move into the Mueller investigation. And he served there throughout the investigation. One of the things that the whistleblowers point out is that Giardina's laptop mysteriously got totally wiped clean.
Weird.
So
just like Hillary
all
stuff.
the data on there was now unavailable to you as journalists. The whistleblowers point out that there were more than one person on the Mueller report team that used a technique where they put their password in a number of times in their cell phones.
Yeah, Andrew Weissman did that.
So it seemed to be the culture of the Mueller report. And if, in fact, it's true that Giardina actually did that on purpose, that's a felony. That alone would put him in jail. Now, you think I'd be done, but no, I got a lot more to go with this guy. There was a thing called the Emoluments Clause. It's a clause in the Constitution that says that people like presidents and government officials can't take money from foreign governments or from state governments by getting favors, things like that, okay? Again, Giardina, according to whistleblowers, was at the very root of that, propelling that forward. It has been revealed as nothing more than a fishing expedition. It was like a license to hunt, phone records, and all sorts of other things. They did a ton of them. That guy was at the center of that. And then, in my view, some of the worst damage he did, not just to the president, but to a lot of people I consider my friends, is something called Operation Arctic Frost.
Yep, we covered that.
And that was the one that followed J6 that investigated all the events surrounding the use of the Electoral Count Act of 1887, which is a perfectly legitimate tool to call for a recount of votes. Giardina used that, and it led to attacks on people like Jeff Clark, John Eastman, both of whom may lose their law license.
Yeah, still under attack by lunatics.
Jenna Ellis, Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani. Giardina was there as well. And in some sense, I buried the lead because going back to Crossfire Hurricane, one of the big casualties there, and a great friend of mine and a patriot, was Mike Flynn. He was forced to resign because of that nonsense. And when we lost Mike Flynn early on in the administration, we wound up with John Bolton. How'd that work out?
Not good.
Most treacherous people that's ever been in that West Wing. So this is the guy, if you weave that through, it paints a picture of a sustained effort by people inside the FBI, inside the Justice Department, inside what we love to call the deep state, which is what it is, inside the rhino wing of the Republican Party, going after Donald Trump. So this guy, nobody should feel sorry for him. He's not a martyr. New York Times, you got to do a better job of doing your journalism. And he's the guy that put me in handcuffs, put me in leg irons. He's the guy that served me with my subpoena. He's the guy who testified at the grand jury. And there's allegations there that that testimony was not truthful. He's the guy that testified at my trial. And I hold this man responsible, and it's not about me. I hold him responsible for a lot of what has been done to really erode trust of the American people in our American justice system. That's the story of Walter Giardina. I urge every one of you guys to read the Breitbart article, fact check me, and I dare you to find anything I say in there that's not absolutely true. And if it's absolutely true, that man needs to go before Congress, and needs to be hauled up, and he needs to be held accountable. And it's not just him, it's Obama, it's Clinton, it's Comey, Page, Clapper, Brennan, Schiff, and all the rest of them.
Yeah.
Okay, that's that story.
Love it. Thank you for that, Peter Navarro. Go get them all. And man, that was kind of, what's the word, cathartic? To hear him, a guy who's been put through the ringer from these maniacs, come out and blow out Walter Giardina. Man, obliterated. He probably feels like a total loser right now. Probably not. He's probably hanging out with Jen Psaki and Barack Obama. But my friends, what a beautiful stream it has been. Thank you for being here. If you're just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about here today before we hear from you. We've got the big victory over Big Tish in New York City in the Big Apple. We got a big decision that we went through. We covered a good portion of it, I would say. Understanding what the main decision was, and then spending more time on the Friedman opinion, which was a very good opinion. In fact, Trump even referenced it, saying thank you to Judge Friedman for giving us a good decision. We saw Big Tish is going to be appealing this and crying hard about it. And Alina Abba is going through it. She's got to have to now battle for her position after this order came down out of New Jersey. But we saw some reaction and some demands for repercussions for Tish. Representative Claudia Tenney from New York is saying, how about Trump sues her for deprivation of rights and gets monetary damages? You know what I think it'd be worth from Tish? $500 million. How about that? So we talked about this case. You're very familiar with this story. We know we're not getting any grand jury records anytime soon. And this was a curious one because you see what a total scam this entire investigation was. Okay, 70 pages. That's what we've been talking about here. How long have we been screaming about, where are the grand jury records? Nowhere. It's 70 pages. It's like a pamphlet from some FBI agent with a PowerPoint slide deck. Oh, gosh. What a scam. All right, so then we talked about Ian Sam talking about scams. And Ian Sam talking about scams. Okay, so he apparently met with Joe Biden twice over 2 years and 3 months. That's it. And he was the spokesperson for the president. James Comer answered a lot of questions about it. I thought he did a great job explaining just how shocking that is. We also saw the Clinton people were under investigation. Some very credible whistleblowers had them pinned. And then suddenly the investigation just disappears because that's how it works when you're part of the power structure. And Peter Navarro with a very cathartic and appropriate shredding of a corrupt FBI agent, in our opinion, Walter Giardina. And now, my friends, it's time to hear from you. And we're very glad that you're here. Thanks for being here. Thanks for subscribing to our channel if you haven't already done that, so we never miss you again. We don't want to miss you when we're back here tomorrow. On Friday. It's going to be Friday tomorrow. That's pretty cool. All right, let's see who's here and joining us. Donut and John, thank you for clipping for us today on this afternoon. And we got some nice comments and new babies. We love new babies. And we have a river flotilla. Let's take a look at what we got. My friends, thanks for sending these in. Thanks for supporting us and the things that we're doing here. Happy Thursday. Look at this fluffy cat. Is that a cat? I think it's supposed to be a cat, but I don't know. I don't really know what it is. All right, thank you for that. 2 babies in the house. What's up, Steph D? 18 months as a member. That's 2 full babies in the house, 2 full terms. Steph, thanks for being here so long. That's a long time. Best way to support our second baby, this judgment. It is. It is like it's like we gave birth to a big tishy judgment. Patty B Photography. I've been away but had to come back for this. We're glad you did, Patty B. Please pray for my brother. He's got terminal brain cancer. I've missed y'all. Patty B, we will pray for your bro and for your family. And we'll send some love and peace your way. Thank you, Patty B. Sorry to hear about that, but we're glad you made it back. We had a nice victory today. Shout out to Patty B Photography. What's up, Spuds? You know, you never know what might come your way on the Erie Canal. This is the Float Sam River Circus from Washington State. They are going down the canal to help celebrate the 200th anniversary. That looks awesome. Yeah, looks awesome. Looks like fun. You just live there, live stream from there, you know, just float around on a river. Severus, what's up? Hey, 1 more month to go to get 2 snarky babies. Well, that's how you know they're ours, don't you? Severus, 17 months as a membo. 1 more to 2 full terms, and we'll be glad for that. Severus, hope you had a great workout today. Jeremiah, 5x5 in the house, says, exclusive, prosecutors secured evidence. Yeah, I saw this one too from Just the News, man. They've been getting them. So I think there was another drop today. We'll probably talk about it tomorrow. Comey authorized classified leaks, but declined charges to go after Comey. Even though we know he was the leaker. He hired the media dude and brought him in and gave him top secret security clearance, remember? Hey, thank you for that, Chubby. Didn't find he violated the statute of limitations. Nips outright admitted he was doing it. Those judges need to be removed from the bench. Yeah, and Friedman really called out like the backroom politicking is what it sounds like. Because we got 3 decisions, but 5 judges. 2 of them went on board without really being on board, just for finality. It's kind of a scam. Hey, Angel, what's up? Devilishly Angelic. What's up, Devilishly Angelic? Perfect gift for you. Says here, Left Coaster coming in the house. MSWE, what's up, DeWitt? We got Dance Master and Cheryl's, all gifted membos. Courtesy of Devilishly Angelic in the house. Thank you for doing that, Devilishly Angelic. We appreciate you watching on Rumble, too. Hey, Deanne Elliott. How on earth did liberals have no consequence to leaving state? I think you mean in Texas, probably. Yeah, Deanne Elliott. You're right. They really didn't. They had kind of a nice little holiday vacation on Pritzker's bosom. Hopefully they're happy with themselves. Off-label podcast. Hey, my bad. Wasn't watching this morning. Should have figured you were on the appeal. Celebration time. Crockett full of loses her seat. I know, Jasmine. Has she had a meltdown yet over this? I don't think I've seen that yet. Not that I'm, seeking it out, but yeah, because Texas, right? They're moving forward. I think Abbott is going to sign it tomorrow, is what we read this morning. Good to see you. Off-label podcast right next door. What's up, John Uhlman in the house? Thank you, John, for being here 7 months. We really appreciate that. Coming up on 1 full baby, and you're looking beautiful. CF Rob, what's up, Rob? Says a prophylactic for TISH is a laxative. Oh my gosh. Don't. Thank you for that, Rob. Don't. Matt Hey, there it is. Matthew I was thinking Matthew Graves. I'm like, that is not it. It's Matthew Colangelo. Thank you, Don. Yeah. Went to Bragg's office from the Justice Department. That's right. Matthew Colangelo. I have his image like seared in my brain. He's in one of our mind maps somewhere. Hey, Michael Stetson. There you go, man. You guys got it, man. Thank you for the assist on that. Michael Stetson, 27 months as a member. Matthew Colangelo was the one who left the DOJ. And so, yeah, as I was reading that, I got my timelines kind of screwed up, which I sometimes tend to do. But that's exactly right. Yeah, it was the Biden DOJ. He went over to kind of jumpstart those prosecutions against Trump in the run-up to the election. That's exactly right. Matthew Colangelo. Yeah, Tony Hey Munkets, what's up? Happy anniversary, Michael Stetson. Look at that. 27 and 28 months as a membo. You guys are like, the newborn babies, like you grew up together, like cousins or something. Thank you for that, Tony Hay and Michael Stetson. Mrs. Mom says, wasn't Tish working with Barr? I don't think I've seen anything confirmed on that. Like, was Bill Barr, I think you might be referencing Mrs. Mom, the Bill Barr and the Fannie Willis story, which I've got my doubts about, based on the source, that woman. But that was the allegation, that Bill Barr was working with Fannie. And I heard Byron Donalds get asked about it, and he's like, well, I don't know, we'll find out, and didn't answer it. So I'm not sure there's anything there, but we also heard from Barr. He testified on Monday, or he had an interview on Monday with Oversight, and said that Trump wasn't in the files, basically. Jay Marino, what's up? BSD says, those legal morons just ruled that one fraudulent mortgage transaction is an existential threat to the global economy. What about Tish, Schiff, and Brown? I'm running for New York AG. If Trump's fine was $500 million, Tish's fine should be at least $75 million. I hope she's got the money for the bond to appeal. Yeah, Trump had to come out $500 million, so she can come out too. Hey, Jay Marino. They absolved premeditated political lawfare and an unfettered corrupt court system. They effectively sanctioned, show me the man, I'll show you the crime, from Lev Beria, Stalin's chief of police. Every lawyer representing a high-profile client or controversial political opinion is changing New York's venue and jurisdiction contract clauses and calling the moving company. Right? Yeah, I think that's right. Good comments there. Thank you, Jay Marino. We got Mizzy M. Hey, you do a great job in service. Mizzy. So much of drilling down to the truth is filtering out the noise, and your channel does a great job at that with presenting the source documents. Thank you, Mizzy M. Really nice of you to say that. I think I appreciate that you appreciate it. I mean, I think that the primary source documents are important. I know sometimes they can be a little tedious. We try to spice them up a little bit, liven them up a bit, but I think, instructive. And I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Ms. EM, for the dono. Leonard's, what's up? Trump is a good man. Evil people hate good people. Yeah, and some people just hate everybody and everything. You know, they're just kind of miserable in their existence. And I think a lot of that is conditioning too. You know, like, you've had ruts in your life where you've been kind of miserable, a miserable person with no cheerfulness and constantly. Maybe you got a bout of depression. Maybe you got going through something. But I think there's a contingent of people that just like, they get value out of fighting for a cause. And so they're always looking for something to fight for. And everything has to be a cause. And the only way they get validation is by doing something and helping something somewhere. But what they don't understand is that they're just manipulating and perverting the actions of the world by trying to manipulate them to serve their ends. So thank you for that, Leonards. Schlista, hey, here's what Trump should do about Alina Abba. Send Janine Pirro to New Jersey as the DA and then appoint Alina over to DC. Janine's already confirmed by Congress, and now Alina is in DC, where the judges didn't kick her out. So, and then once her time expires over there, you just move her to a different district. There's a bunch of districts, so probably do that for a while. Hey, MCM, 21M in the house. What's up, MCM? We listened to those New York judges, and they were all questioning the legality, stupidity, and craziness of this whole case. What the heck? What recourse does Trump have at this point to have the case thrown out? Well, I think they'll both be appealing it. Okay, so I think both sides will appeal it. And they'll both make their arguments. Like Tish says she's appealing it. She wants to appeal the disgorgement portion. Trump will respond to that. He'll be appealing the liability portion and whatever the other contingencies are on his team at the Trump org. So it will still go forward. I think you've seen some other actions like Trump could sue, right? So that's one option. We saw Claudia Tenney mention that. So maybe Trump sues Tish for abuse of office, you know, at state court level, federal court level, something. But otherwise, you know, the other, like, should Trump be able to go get, you know, interest or back pay or something like that based on the money that he didn't have in his possession and claim damages? And what do those damages look like? Hopefully he does something. I don't think he'll get much, probably in turn. Like, we talked about this on a members only stream. When the government screws you, you're just basically screwed. Like, I know that's not always the case. You can file a notice of claim, but the example that I use regularly is that, you know, I've represented people who have been innocent of DUIs, no alcohol, no drugs in their system, still arrested, still abused, car still impounded, blood still drawn, license still all the things. 100% innocent, just has some stupid maniac cop. And what can that person do to recover those damages? Usually nothing. Okay, you're just kind of out of luck. Your case gets dismissed. You got to pay for a lawyer. All that time's gone. Your body just got violated by some, you know, phlebotomist somewhere. And what can you do about it? It's the government. They've got qualified immunity. They've got sovereign immunity. They've got all sorts of, judicial immunity, qualified immunity for cops. So you just kind of suffer through it. And this is the point. Like, this is Trump. Nobody else could have survived this. He had, I mean, just like physically, I don't know how he did it, going around to all these court dates while campaigning. Financially, you imagine how much money he spent? How many hundreds of millions of dollars did he have to spend defending himself that could have been repurposed and been more useful in other affairs? Sharpie Guy, thank you for the nice dono, MCM. Sharpie Guy, so Trump paid $100 million a month for the bonding company and posted another astronomical amount as the fee to appeal. What happens now when New York is nearly broke? And can he sue for damages against the corruption? I mean, what would happen to John Q? This is beyond dirty, right? Love y'all. Alexis, you, Mama G. Mom's good. She's doing great. I talked to her yesterday about her knee, and she's doing great. Yeah, she's like, man, it's sore, but a different sore. Not like the bad sore. It's like surgery sore. So awesome. Good to see you, Sharpie Guy. Thanks for asking about Mama. We appreciate that. Hey, Arnold Newton, 2 more babies, 2 terms. It's about time Tish be locked up ASAP. Well, that's what Peter Navarro said. And, if you abuse your office to try to attack somebody else as a partisan, I'm sure you can make a claim there. What's going to happen in New York is, she probably won't get indicted and judges will and jurors will not convict, but she can defend herself just like Trump had to do. Smooth Brain Crypto in the house says a storm is brewing. And that's an ominous super chat there, Smooth Brain Crypto. I think crypto is, for smart, very smart people. And so I don't know if you're talking about a storm brewing in crypto or if it's a storm brewing in prosecutions. Probably the latter. Thank you for the nice dono, Smooth Brain Crypto. Good to have you here. Jay Marino says, Joe Biden was brain dead. Obama, his minions, and the radical leftist deep state actually running the country. Be still, my beating heart. I'm shocked. It's all lies. Remember, best Biden ever. That was Jay Marino, but it kind of sounded like, Joe Scarborough. This is Biden's best ever. I saw him talking once. Elaine Embla. What's up? Elaine Embla in the house. 37 months as a memo. That's a long time, Elaine. I don't even know how many babies that is. I have to get out a calculator or a spreadsheet or something. So happy I found this channel. We are too. We're glad you're here. Elaine Embla in the house. Elaine MBLA in the house. Here in the house. We appreciate you. And Queen Bee's Art Hive, 21 months as a member, says, I love all the Watch and the Watcher fam, baby. We love you back, Queen Bees. Love you, Rob. Many prayers out in the air. Thanks for being here for 21 months as a member. Queen Bee's Art Hive, 8234. You rock. Thanks for that. CF Rob, Hunter had Joe sniffing and smoking cocaine and crack to get him on a high horse. That's why there was coke found all over the White House. Because Hunter was sniffing it. Jay Marino says, yeah, Woodrow Wilson's press secretary. Woodrow Wilson was maybe the worst president of all time. Tony Hay Muckets, thank you for being here. 10 new membos coming in. Bob Doles. In the house. Bob Gable, Greg Collins. What's up, Rag? Okay. Janice Camp, welcome. Alaskan Sauce. Threads of Hera. We got Tony Ruggiero, Pete Harlan, James Wheaton, and more coming in courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets. Hey, it's the Munkets. Thanks for bringing in new membos, Tony Hay. We got Jay Marino says, just like Tulsi, they have to go after the colonels, majors, captains, and lieutenants. Trophy hunting makes great headlines, but it doesn't change the cultures. Yeah, no, we were saying everybody, top to bottom. And that's kind of, those are military labels, but in the DOJ, everybody from top to bottom, janitors, law clerks, the guy who changes the toner, like, you're gone. John McGarvey, what's up? Hey, Bruce Rice says, Bruce Rice has found his new home here in the good place. Bruce Rice Baby is over on Locals now? Man, that's great to have Bruce Rice Baby over here. You got banned on YouTube? Oh, man. Bruce Rice. That's not good. I wonder what happened. J. Lou, 5 new membos coming in. J. Lou, 714, 5 membos on Rumble. Thank you, J. Lou. Zoria, CF Rob, Steve Coco. We got San Glant in the house and Norqueen, gifted membos, courtesy of J. Lou in the house. Thank you, J. Lou, for being you. Julia Peters, 4 months as a membo, says, Rob, you're great. Thank you for the hard work. Thank you, Julia Peters. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting us for 4 months. Coming up over halfway to a full baby in the house. That's a long time. We appreciate you. And TW56AZ, 18 months as a membo, says Trump paid $60 million in interest on the bond. He should sue. Yeah, that's a lot of money, man. So he paid that. Like, you got to pay that to get that money. So he's out of pocket. Is that the number? Yeah, he should sue. And she can pay for it out of her TISH. This old guy says, hey, Ian Sams had annual meetings with Joe Biden. Yeah, what a piece of work, right? Once a year. And he was the spokesperson telling us how amazing he was. Like, how could you do that? How could you be such a dishonest person that you just go out there for a year? You haven't seen the dude in a year or talked to him in a year. And you're like, oh, everything's great. It's like, gosh, it's just, what kind of a person are you? Rob says, Rob and Alexis can do this for us. This is from the channel called Felly from Germany. Man, looks like a great link there. Thanks, Rob, for sending that one in. NY, what's up? Hey, I have a question. Trump, NY Renal MD, Trump had to put up money for the bond. Letitia fought the Trump team motion to stay enforcing the verdict. Most of the time this is granted. Don't you think the New York State should reimburse the money for the cost of the bond if this ends up being totally vacated? Yeah, I think that's right. He should sue for damages. $60 million. Oh my gosh, that he had to eat. It was a financial attack on him. They tried to steal his business. What's going on? We got Bruce Rice Baby says, I'll be over here, Rob. No more YouTube losing too many IQ points. Well, we're happy to have you, Bruce. Thank you for the nice dono and for being with us on Locals. Great to have you, Bruce. Sorry, I don't know what happened with YouTube, but we appreciate you. Hey, Rumac, what's up? Hey, I appreciate your show. The reading of the transcripts with the explanation are fantastic. Thank you, Rumac. What a nice comment. I appreciate you saying that. We're going to keep doing it, man. We got a lot more transcripts to read through. So thank you, Rumac. Thanks for watching on Rumble and supporting us over there. Uncle Bozy, can the current DOJ, as for a charge of change of venue, ask for a change of venue in hopefully upcoming criminal cases? I feel like cases tried in DC or New York will be a waste of time. Probably. If the deep state will do what we know they did, they certainly would hesitate to tamper with jurors. So this is actually a big problem, Uncle Bozy. And I think I saw Janine Pirro talking about it. Like, they're not getting juries to indict people because the jurors are just like, no, we like crime. No, they're our color or our whatever. And they're not indicting people. So, well, what can you do about that? Not much, to be honest with you. So you can't, criminal cases are geographically, they're tied to a geographic jurisdiction. Like if you shoot somebody in Phoenix, you get charged, in Maricopa County. So, you could charge them in Florida or charge them in Texas, charge them in the Texas district court and say there's a criminal conspiracy. Like, I think that's probably the strategy in Florida right now, especially on the Crossfire Hurricane, Mar-a-Lago raid stuff, all of it. Like, file that in Florida. There was a lot of activity down there, flying back down there and all sorts of stuff. So maybe that can be the centerpiece of the conspiracy case. NY, here's the problem with abusive DUI. They have police who have minimal training essentially performing physical exams. Yeah, which most states actually codify who can do these. Neat defense for a smart lawyer. Only physicians, nurses, and some medical personnel have the training to examine a human and interpret it. Yeah, so you're talking about horizontal gaze nystagmus and the pen test that you see a lot. And you follow the device, and if you're drunk, your eyes will jerk back to the center. And you're like, 'cause you shouldn't rotate your head. You keep it here. Your eyes come over here. Your eyes should be jerking back to the center. So if you're drunk, try it with your friends and you'll see. But it's a very convoluted test and cops are terrible at it. And so like you're on the side of the road. They're like shining this into your eyes. You got cars whizzing by. It's not the standardized test like they claim it is. And in a lot of states, I can't say that. Yeah, in Arizona, you don't have to do it. All they're doing with those tests is to try to create probable cause. And they just make them up anyways. Oh, yeah, 6 of sticks, nystagmus. Whatever. Oh, yeah, walk and turn. One leg stand. You see all the things. It's ridiculous. Rick D, we call them roadside agility maneuvers, says, now we should have body cams. The decision should be deferred to expert personnel later while using blood, urine, and breathalyzer info. Take it away from cops on the beat. Yeah, so a lot of the time they're not using those to actually get the conviction. They're using those to justify the arrest. Then once the arrest happens, then they draw the bodily sample. Then the bodily sample is used and admitted as evidence against the person. So defense attorneys many times are filing motions to dismiss the case based on the field sobriety tests, the FSTs, which are happening here, and also fighting blood and breath. But then you have other states. You have some police departments that do both. They'll do blood and breath. Those are tough cases. Rick D, 15 months as a membo, 3 months to another baby. Because that's right. That's 15 plus 3 is 18. I think that's 2 babies. As far as my multiples of 9 can go. Rick D, we appreciate you. Thank you for being here. And for being here for 15 months. You're amazing. Jay Marino, I remember Watergate. What happened and is now being disclosed to the public is a seditious conspiracy involving every branch of the government as well as state officials. This is a big deal. Watergate was nothing compared to this. I think that's right. Yeah, Watergate was like a break-in over some files, remember? This was an orchestrated coup that came down from the president of the United States called Barack Obama. And they're trying to get away with it, but not for long. All right, let's see who's on X, my friends, and then we'll wrap it up and head over to our members-only after party on YouTube and on Locals. We have some great comments here. What's up, Neuro D? Over on X. Make sure you're following our friends on X. B Torn, what's up? Danny McWilliams says, nothing's going to happen to these judges, okay? DAs are above the law. Prove me wrong. And Priscilla, what's up, says, yes, let's go Trump. Mini Tika, yeah, that's right. Justice, one appeal at a time. One appeal at a time, indeed. And there is our channel, my friends. Hopefully we see you over there. We're very glad to have you following us over there. We got Tony Hay Munkets and Jay Marino. Says, you're the tip of the informational spear. I'll look forward for your best-selling book in 5 years. You're appreciated. Thank you, Jay Marino. Yeah, well, it's a nice idea, Jay Marino. I think it's a very nice idea. It'd be nice to do a little bit more writing. What's up, Tony Hay Munkets? I find that the best defense attorneys are the ones that know everybody, if you get my point. I had a lawyer and he's like, oh, I have lunch with the judge. Yeah, I think it probably depends. Like if you're in a big city, there's some of that matters, but a lot of it doesn't, because a lot of it, like discretion is kind of stripped away from everybody. Everything is so proceduralized. So like in the city of Phoenix, like if you want a deviation, back when I was practicing a few years ago, it go up to a committee. It's been like this forever, right? So a deviation goes to a committee and then the committee decides on that and will give you a better plea deal or whatever. And so it's very formalized and proceduralized. So like the fact you know the prosecutor, the fact you know the judge is not going to get you a technical advantage, but you might have a position like this. We did a lot. Like if you're going to go close a case out, you might want to set your sentencing in front of another judge because you know that judge, and that judge doesn't have a problem with this type of offense, whereas this other judge has a major problem with that type of an offense. So if you can just kind of, finagle that and you have a rapport with the judge, then you can get some benefits there. But like if a lawyer's like, hey, I know the judge and I'll get your case dismissed, there's a high propensity that lawyer is lying to you. Like there's a lot of snake oil salesman lawyers out there, like defense lawyers, like, I know, dog. Oh, that judge? Oh, yeah, I know him. We go golfing. I'm like, shut. No, you don't. And even if you did, like that judge is not going to give you a plea deal because your lawyer golfed with him or something like that. Like it's just a sales technique, which I actually think is dishonest. And judges shouldn't be doing that, right? But there are other environments, like smaller towns are much easier. And I went to, I don't know, over 100 courts in Arizona, tons of courts, traveled all over all four corners of the state to go to courts. And I saw a lot of different judges, lots of cops, lots of different juries and different people. And in those smaller towns, you definitely can get stuff done, but sometimes not either. Like if you're not a part of that town, you're like an outside lawyer and you come in. Like a lot of the Tucson judges don't like Phoenix judges. I had one Tucson judge is like, what do you think you are, a fancy Scottsdale lawyer? I was like, yeah, kind of. So what? Anyways, Jay Marino, thank you for that, man. Really nice. Says, I look forward to your best-selling book in 5 years. It might be sooner than that. Hopefully we can produce something good at some point. All right, my friends, thank you for being here. Thanks for the great comments. Thanks for joining us on this victorious day. Tish blown out of the water, absolutely obliterated. Having a tough day. So we'll see what comes next. Of course, we'll come back tomorrow. I know there were some amazing drops out there that just dropped, like this new Just the News reveal on some more declassified docs. So we'll come back tomorrow, my friends. We'll get into it again. Of course, before we wrap up, want to say thanks to our amazing mods and meme smiths, John and Donut Mind Me, clipping hard for us tonight. Carrie B and K Bean in the mornings. Thank you. We got Neuro D, Janek, Dog Digger, G-Gum, Just Rhonda, and Elliot mowing the fort down for us. And we're grateful for our amazing mods. And now, my friends, we're going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. YouTube friends, I'll drop an after party members only link in the chat in just a quick second, and I hope to see you there. But if not, we're coming back tomorrow, my friends, and it's going to be a Friday. We're excited about that. It's not here yet, but when it does come, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Swap Part just said this one. The Teflon Don wins again. If you close your eyes and listen carefully, you can hear the leftist screams. Here, let's listen. Dictatorship. It's a dictatorship. All right, so you get it. They're screaming at this. It's a dictator. All right, so we get it. Thank you, Swap Part. All right, so my friends, we'll leave it there. It's a beautiful day. Make it a great night, and I hope to see you right back here tomorrow. Until then, be well, and bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through the scripted ruse. Together